What's up, my comic comrades? There are a ton of detectives in comics, but for today, we've narrowed them down to a list of characters we think are the 10 best. With that said, I do want to mention that this list is very DC heavy, and that's because many DC characters fall into the criminal detective category. I mean, DC literally stands for Detective Comics. The word detective is literally in their freaking name, so it's no shocker they have a ton of great detectives. Anyway, that's why you're going to see more DC characters on this list. We also want to thank Epic Games for sponsoring today's episode. Epic Games is legendary for bringing us games like Fortnite, but you could also pick up some of your favorite games on their store. That includes the insane new game that everyone's been talking about, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, from Respawn Entertainment. It's actually available on the Epic Games Store right now for $59.99. And by using our link in the description below to download and start playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order yourself, Epic Games is going to hook you up with a free Stormtrooper skin to use within Fortnite. If you're not familiar with Jedi Fallen Order, it's a third-person Star Wars adventure game that picks up after the events of Revenge of the Sith and the Jedi Purge at the command of Emperor Palpatine's Order 66. You play as Cal, a Jedi Padawan in hiding after he managed to escape the Empire and is living as a scrapper to survive. But things quickly change as he joins a group of Resistance members to locate a hidden list of Force-sensitive children and rebuild the Jedi Order, all with the help of your faithful droid, BD-1. Along the way, as one of the last Jedi left in the galaxy, you also have to complete your Jedi training before the Inquisitor catches up to you, which of course includes a crap ton of lightsaber training and combat, mastering the Force, and coming face to face with powerful enemies of all kinds. You may run into some familiar faces as well. It's basically the Star Wars game we always wanted. Look, if that doesn't get your Peter tingle going, I don't know what will. So click our link in the description below to download Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from the Epic Games Store now and get your free Stormtrooper skin in Fortnite as a bonus. Also, make sure to use our supported creator code Variant-Comics during checkout, as you will be helping to support our channel and everything we're trying to develop here. But now, let's see who made the cut for the 10 best detectives in all of comics. Off the list is the Shadow, who first appeared on the Detective Story Hour radio show in July of 1930, before making his comic book debut in Shadow Comics issue 1 in February of 1940. Putting it simply, he was basically Batman before Batman, created around 9 years before the Caped Crusader made his debut. Sure, Batman beat him to being printed within the pages of a comic, but there's an argument to be made that the Dark Knight wouldn't exist without the creation of the Shadow. Both real world and fiction, as it turns out. You see, in Batman issue 259, we learned that a young Bruce Wayne encountered the Shadow when he stopped a robbery at a bank Bruce was at with his parents. Years later, after he became Batman, he would end up teaming up with the Shadow, and once they laid the smackdown on crime, the Shadow tells Batman, "I'm happy to state you fulfilled my greatest expectations." Then Batman replies, "I consider that a magnificent compliment. I've never told anyone this, but you were my biggest inspiration. I'd be honored to shake your hand." We also learn in Batman issue 259 that the Shadow knew all along that Bruce Wayne was indeed Batman, deducing his identity. Needless to say, he's a pretty good detective to figure out who Batman is. Again, the Shadow is very similar to Batman, which is why they've teamed up several times in the comics and have had several different miniseries together. Obviously, one of the core aspects of being a great detective is knowing where to look. And as the saying goes, the Shadow knows. Up next, we have Multiple Man. He first appeared in Giant Size Fantastic Four issue 4 in February of 1975. For whatever reason, I feel like this one might be a shocker to a lot of people, that Multiple Man is a fantastic detective. So much so, he made X-Factor investigations with several other allies in the Marvel Universe. His mutant abilities allow him to multiply himself, hence his name. But what this means for his detective work is that he can be in more than one place at once, being able to work different angles of a case all at the same time. And besides just being able to do multiple things at once he reabsorbs all of his duplicates, he also takes in all their experience and memory. But to push that point even further, he can make duplicates and have them go live their own separate lives and gain experience in different things, so when he reabsorbs them, he can solve problems from a bunch of different angles. Basically, what it comes down to is 2 brains are better than 1, or in this case, many. Next up, we have Jessica Jones, who made her first appearance in Alias issue 1 in November of 2001. Now, if you know anything about Jessica Jones, or have even seen her Netflix series, you know the whole character is rooted in detective work, as she's a private investigator. So it shouldn't be at all shocking she made this list. The character whose whole background is based on her detective skills and being an investigative journalist better be good at her job. And she is. She was one of the main people to expose Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. but more than anything, it's her street-level smarts that makes her such a good detective. The crazy thing is she didn't set out to be a detective, but after a brief run with the Avengers, she created Alias Investigations, which let her work closer with people she wanted to help. It's almost one of those scenarios that you just do something because you're good at it, not necessarily because you want to be doing it. Either way, that skill puts her on this list. Then we have lucky number 7, which is Detective Chimp, first appearing in Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog issue 4 in 1952. This is probably the weirdest character on this list, as he's literally a chimp detective. Now, if you know anything about Detective Chimp, he's a really weird yet cool character. He's a chimp with a genius level intellect. This gives him great investigation skills, along with his ability to conversate with all animals no matter where they're from, which kind of falls in line with the saying, if only these walls could talk. Meaning people say and do stuff around animals all the time because, well, they can't talk. But Detective Chimp can talk to them. He could also write and talk in all forms of human language. It is also said that his detective skills rival that of Ralph Dibny and even Batman, so it's not surprising he was inching his way towards the top 5. The next character on our list is Hellboy, making his first appearance in a regularly published title in X-Men issue 21. Hellboy is widely considered to be the best paranormal investigator alive, and what's crazy is that his discovery led to the creation of BPRD, which stands for the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, which is a private organization that investigates any and all threats that are supernatural in nature. And besides the years of training, Hellboy's investigation skills are aided with a bunch of arcane artifacts and talismans. This, along with all of his knowledge of magical rituals, spells, and what have you, give him a massive edge with all of his occult investigations. And to top it all off, Hellboy is a demon who possesses abilities like superhuman strength, a healing factor, immunity to all diseases, and the ability to comprehend ancient and magical languages, which is just the tip of the iceberg, so it's easy to see why he's rounding out the bottom 5. And if you thought being a detective was hard, imagine being a supernatural detective. Also, shout out to our boy Comic Tom, because I know this is his favorite character. Making the top 5 is The Question, first appearing in Blue Beetle issue 1 in 1967. Some people may be saying, well, which Question are you talking about? And both. Vic Sage and Renee Montoya. What makes The Question such a great detective is the fact that he or she leaves nothing off the table, going into full conspiracy theory territory. The Question has complete and utter dedication to his craft, also being a master interrogator. In fact, The Question is such a great detective, the character Rorschach is loosely based on The Question and is just a more extreme version of him. Vic Sage Question would later train and pass The Question mantle down to Gotham City detective Renee Montoya. I must admit though, my love for The Question came from the Justice League Unlimited animated series, where again, his detective skills were insane. It's my personal favorite interpretation of The Question to date. Just missing the top 3, we have Elongated Man, first appearing in The Flash issue 112 in May of 1960. Ralph Dibny, aka Elongated Man, has been a detective right from the beginning. Besides his ability to stretch his limbs, Dibny has such a love for mystery, his nose literally twitches when he smells mystery. Needless to say, this spider sense of sorts gives him a huge leg up when it comes to detective work. Dibny and his wife Sue were actually detectives together, and they solved metahuman cases, but she was murdered and he died trying to resurrect her. But even death couldn't stop their love for mystery, so they became detectives in the supernatural realm. But this is comics, so of course both of them were resurrected sometime later. But all I really have to say is, Elongated Man is such a good detective, he is one of the top 5 detectives in the entire DC universe. Sometimes his skills even rival Batman's. Making the top 3, we have Flash. Now this shouldn't be any surprise to anyone. Sure, the Flash is known for being the fastest man alive, but he's also top 3 best detectives in all of comics. At least, I think so. All of us probably know by now that the Flash is a crime scene investigator, which is one of the hardest forms of investigating because a lot of the time you're dealing with investigations where people are dead. Meaning you literally have to use math and science to figure everything out on your own because, well, dead bodies don't talk much. Besides being a brilliant CSI, what helps the Flash in being a great detective is the fact that he could think at the speed of light. Meaning, even if he's not as smart as someone like, let's say, Mr. Terrific, because he thinks so fast, he can still come to a conclusion before someone that's smarter than him just because of how fast he goes through all the information. But here's the cherry on top, which really solidifies how good of a detective he is. In The Flash issue 64, Batman says, "I've always respected Barry's ability in the crime lab. Most people debate if he or Superman is faster, but I've privately always wondered who is the better detective, between Flash and me." So even freaking Batman, the world's greatest detective, doesn't necessarily know if he's a better detective than him. Do I need to say more? Runner-up on our list is none other than Tim Drake, the third Robin and current Red Robin. He first made his appearance as Robin in Batman issue 442. The easiest and best way I could prove to you to why he's the second best detective in comics is because of something that Batman said. In Batman Hush, Batman is quoted as saying, "Dick saw Robin as being a thrill. It's probably why he outgrew it. Jason saw Robin as a game. It's probably what got him killed. But Tim, I have to hand it to the boy. He wants to be the world's greatest detective, and from what I've seen so far, he will be someday." But the detective compliments keep coming. Grayson even once told Drake, "You're twice the detective I ever was." And then you have the time Ra's al Ghul told Tim Drake, "Well done, detective." And if you know anything about Ra's al Ghul, that is an incredible compliment, as he has to hold you in very high regard to call you that. But lastly, in the Robin War storyline, there's a caption that says, "Tim Drake, aka Red Robin, formerly the world's second greatest detective, currently the world's greatest detective." It says currently the world's greatest detective because when this storyline took place, Batman was thought to be dead. Meaning, with Batman alive, he's the world's second greatest detective. And that's info straight from the source material itself. With that said, let's move on to number 1. At number 1, which should be no surprise to any of you, is of course Batman, first appearing in Detective Comics 27 in May of 1939. Again, this is not a shocker to any of you, and if it is, really? Literally, one of Batman's most famous nicknames is the world's greatest detective. He's such a good detective that Ra's al Ghul calls him detective. Not Batman, not Bruce, but detective out of pure respect. And to have respect from someone like Ra's al Ghul says a lot. As we know, Batman is a master of pretty much everything: espionage, stealth, martial arts, computer science. The list goes on for almost infinity. But one of the things that makes him so dangerous besides all of that is his crime solving and detective skills. Because that means he's just always one step ahead of you, which is one of the many reasons you have the saying, "because he's Batman." You know you're insanely dangerous when Superman, who's essentially a god, calls you the most dangerous man on Earth. Again, I don't feel like I need to elaborate on this. It's literally in his namesake, the world's greatest detective. Case closed. But before we wrap this up, I do want to give you guys a few honorable mentions like Rorschach, Martian Manhunter, Constantine, Misty Knight, and so on and so forth. There's tons of great detectives in comics, so this list was extremely hard. But this is just our list, so let us know what your list would be in the comment section below. First up for the week of November 27th, we have Basketful of Heads issue 2. Writer Joe Hill takes his expertise to the world of comics with this horror series. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed the first issue and curious to see where it's going from there. Next up, we have Batgirl issue 41. After a disastrous defeat at the hands of Oracle, Batgirl must find a way to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. Here we have Scream Curse of Carnage issue 1. This is a brand new ongoing series for Scream that's spinning out of the events of Absolute Carnage. She was always one of my favorite symbiotes from the 90s, so I'm excited that she's getting her own series. And finally, we have The Punisher 2099 issue 1. The future has arrived, but world peace certainly hasn't. In fact, with the streets of Nueva York more crime-ridden than ever, who will rise up to defend the vulnerable population from corruption? And that, my friends, is going to bring another episode of Variant to a close. But if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like our channel, be sure to subscribe and like. It helps us out. But I'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.